If you insist on thinking that way, I won't object, Voldemort replied, his tone smooth but edged with steel. But I certainly won't award points when performance is lacking. Humph. With a huff and a swirl of wind, Snape swept away, his black robes brushing against chairbacks with a whisper of silk and menace. Well done, Quirrell. You've got potential to be Snape the First, Kettleburn said, raising his mostly intact arm in a thumbs up, albeit with only half a thumb. Professor, I think they've misunderstood me. This afternoon should clear things up, Voldemort said. He shrugged, saying no more. Beside him, Professor Flitwick nodded approvingly. Had Voldemort not spoken, Flitwick would have stepped in himself. After all, Quirrell, currently possessed by Voldemort, was from his Ravenclaw house, a student Flitwick had always been fond of. And Voldemort was not lying, at least not entirely. The day's remaining 3 lessons were delivered with remarkable calm and restraint. With the upper year Hufflepuffs, he spent the first half of the lesson explaining banshees to the 6th years, and the second half on whites for the 7th years. No practical spell work at all. For Gryffindor, he followed the same format, but was so gentle that he even awarded them 2 points, his only points given out all day. In the evening Slytherin class, he returned to his original style, though less cruel than usual. Still, he raised the standard for spellcasting precision even higher. By the end of the day, each house had a different impression of him. Ravenclaw upper years thought he was Snape the Second. Hufflepuff upper years thought he was Sprout the Second. Gryffindor upper years thought he was Kettleburn the Second. Slytherin upper years thought he was McGonagall the Second. Ruthless, meticulous, hardy, strict. Professor Quirrell really is a chameleon, students whispered. Curiosity about the new Defense Against the Dark Arts professor only grew, and they wondered how he would treat the lower years. Voldemort himself paid little mind to their gossip. After the evening lesson, he hurried back to his office to await his teaching assistants. They weren't needed for upper year classes, but starting tomorrow, they would be on duty. While waiting, he leafed through the book of spells, still searching for the right one to focus on. But it was difficult. Aside from the 3 unforgivable curses, he had no particular talent for any single spell. Perhaps I just need to choose one that's wondrous enough. He broke off his thoughts as 4 students entered the office. Welcome, he said. Let me give you a quick rundown of your duties. Once they were seated, he continued. First, you will only handle 1st year and 3rd year classes. 2nd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th years are mine to teach. They nodded. They had already guessed as much. The timetable grouped 1st and 2nd years, 3rd and 4th years, and 6th and 7th years together, while 5th years were taught alone. It wasn't hard to figure out their responsibilities. Second, the Maple Leaf training grounds will be under my control during my lessons, but at other times, Professor Hagrid decides its use. You'll need to coordinate with him. Do you mean we should approach Professor Hagrid ourselves? Asked the 6th year Slytherin girl prefect. Yes, Voldemort said with a nod. Also, you'll be responsible for forming teams for the lower year students, minimum 4 per team, maximum 6, and each team must include at least 1 member from every house. The assistants nodded, understanding perfectly. I do not intend for you to assist with the lower year classes of your own houses, Voldemort added. The words made the 4 of them freeze for a moment. Percy Weasley, you'll serve as my assistant when I'm teaching in Slytherin. The moment the words left his mouth, both Percy and the Slytherin 6th year girl prefect, Gemma Farley, gasped in surprise. Professor, he's a Gryffindor, Gemma said, eyes wide. Yes, I know, but this is Hogwarts, Voldemort replied, fixing her with a stern look that made her swallow whatever else she was about to say. Percy, any objections? No, Professor. I'll do as you say, Percy nodded, though a trace of nervousness lingered in his voice. Gemma Farley, you'll handle the Ravenclaw side of assistant duties, Voldemort continued. Ravenclaw was a house he intended to court. Though its students trained in refined self-interest were hard to win over, there was still hope. Hufflepuff, by contrast, would be the hardest to sway while Dumbledore remained at Hogwarts. I understand, Professor, Gemma answered dutifully, though she couldn't help glancing at Percy. Assigning a Gryffindor to assist Slytherins was beyond her comprehension. Robert Hilliard, you'll be my assistant in Hufflepuff. Voldemort said to his younger housemate. Yes, Professor, Robert replied firmly. Of the four, he trusted Voldemort the most. After all, Voldemort wore the face of his senior from Slytherin house. Gabriel Truman, you'll take Gryffindor. Even without being told, Truman had already guessed. He was the only Gryffindor left unassigned. Understood, Professor. I'll see it done, he said, squaring his shoulders. I believe you, and that goes for the other three as well. Voldemort's gaze swept over them. He noticed Percy and Gemma exchanging uneasy looks, but made no comment. One more requirement. In the Maple Leaf training ground, the four of you will operate as a single team. The request didn't surprise them, but Voldemort's next words did. Percy, you'll be the team captain. A devilish grin spread in Voldemort's mind. Little lion, time to learn how to crawl. Chapter 38, The Lion's Confusion. Dumbledore. Quirrell has gone too far. In the headmaster's office, Professor McGonagall's voice was sharp. 2-year groups in one class, lessons in chaos. What kind of quality teaching is that supposed to be? Dumbledore simply smiled, nodded, and gestured for her to take a biscuit from the plate, remaining silent at first. Dumbledore, you need to take a stance. The term's only just begun. There's still time to replace him, McGonagall pressed, her tone edged with disapproval. Calm yourself, Minerva, he answered evenly, unhurried. How am I supposed to stay calm? She shot back, quieter now but still tense. 4 houses, 4 attitudes, 2 different teaching styles, and that's only for the upper years. If. She didn't finish the sentence, but the faint shake of her head made her meaning clear. I think he's doing well, Minerva. Dumbledore rubbed his temples, looking slightly weary but persistent. For Ravenclaw, especially the older students, there's no need to spell out every detail. A rougher approach works fine. Hufflepuff, on the other hand, needs a gentler, more careful method. McGonagall blinked. From that perspective, it was hard to argue. And Slytherin and Gryffindor? She pressed. Slytherin is a special case. During the interview, Quirrell mentioned the issue of dense pureblood magic. I believe he's trying to draw out their potential. Her face darkened immediately. There was a clear hint of pureblood supremacy in that remark. Easy, Minerva, Dumbledore said calmly. Facts aren't prejudice, and they don't mean he's aligned with them. I'm pureblood myself. I understand the distinction. Though not pure blood, McGonagall understood as well. She nodded reluctantly, though her expression remained stiff. As for Gryffindor, we're both Gryffindors. We know the kind of professor we respect. So, hasn't he done well there? He turned the question back to her, but her mind lingered on the earlier topic. He's not? She asked quietly. I mean, he's not that man? No. Dumbledore shook his head slowly, a pained gesture. I once thought so, but all signs point otherwise. So, silence fell, broken only by Fawkes preening nearby. He's here. Dumbledore spoke suddenly, making McGonagall look up in surprise. The castle tells me he's here, but I can't find him. That is what troubles me. If it's not Quirrell, then he must be among the students. A first year? She asked. I don't know. He sipped the murky drink on his desk. I'm getting old, Minerva. My mind tires too easily. I even began to suspect Severus. Perhaps you need rest. Forgive me for bothering you over Quirrell's teaching. A rare flicker of guilt crossed her face. You're deputy headmistress. It's your duty. No need to apologize. Dumbledore drank again. I think he's grown sharper. As far as I know, that shouldn't be possible, but clearly something has happened that I'm unaware of. She nodded, glancing at the book on his desk, radiating a sinister aura, revealing the secrets of advanced dark magic. Clearly he had consulted it often of late. You're taking potions? Her gaze shifted from the book to his drink, tone edged with surprise. A touch of sedative. Severus measures it carefully. Nothing to worry about. He waved a hand dismissively. Is there anything I can do? McGonagall asked. Of course. You must keep fulfilling your role as deputy, even take on some of the headmaster's duties, just as you've done before. You'll manage well. She nodded. She understood he was politely refusing her direct help, and truthfully, she couldn't think of anything she could do. That man was mysterious, cunning, evil, and powerful. Other than Dumbledore, no one could match him. McGonagall knew she could not. Very well, I'll leave you to your rest, but Dumbledore, do take care of yourself. Of course. I value my life highly. He smiled, though the wariness between his brows was impossible to hide. 3rd floor office. I don't really understand, Professor. Percy frowned. The Slytherins aren't going to like me. First years are fine, but by third year they've already become proper Slytherins. Voldemort nodded. Of course he knew this, but he had a plan. Just as mastering a foreign language requires immersion, turning a lion into a serpent demanded the same conditions. What should I do, Professor? Percy asked. The position of assistant professor comes with its own authority. Voldemort rose and poured each of them a glass of plain water. All you need to do is act fairly and impartially. That way they'll have no reason to reject you. But I'm a Gryffindor, and Slytherin prides itself on purebloods. Before he could finish, Voldemort cut in. You're a pureblood too. Percy hesitated, momentarily lost for words. Slytherin values pureblood, yes, but it also reveres strength and authority. You truly have nothing to worry about, Voldemort said, his tone meant to reassure, though Percy's furrowed brow remained. If there's something else troubling you, speak it. I may have a way to resolve it, Voldemort pressed. I don't know what to do. Percy lowered his gaze. Everyone in the house supported me becoming prefect, but I can tell they don't respect my authority. They think I'm too rigid. Voldemort nodded. This was indeed a problem. Percy's magical skill and talent were undeniable, but when it came to leading others, he was far too inflexible. It wasn't just his temperament. He had long idolized Barty Crouch, the former head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, exacting, swift, and uncompromising. That approach simply didn't work at Hogwarts. I can't change your nature with words alone, Percy, Voldemort said after a moment's thought. But I can offer advice. Percy's head snapped up, eyes shining with anticipation. Lately he had felt so lost he'd even considered reading books on leadership, though he wasn't sure they'd help. Does Dumbledore hold authority? Voldemort asked. Of course, as headmaster at Hogwarts Voldemort waved a hand, cutting him off. I mean in the wider wizarding world. Does he hold official power? Percy blinked, then shook his head. Dumbledore was only a headmaster. His authority didn't extend into wizarding governance. Yet he can influence the entire wizarding world, not just England, but across Europe, even the globe. A gleam lit Voldemort's eyes, mirrored in Percy's own. Official position is the smallest part of power, Voldemort said, low and deliberate. Those who lead solely by the authority of their office are the most mediocre leaders. Then, what should they rely on? Percy asked eagerly. Influence, like the headmaster? No. Voldemort shook his head firmly, then tapped his chest with his wand. On the hearts of people, Percy, only the hearts of people are the true foundation of power. Countless motes of light hovered beneath the ceiling, flooding the office with a brightness like midday. Voldemort hunched low over his desk, eyes narrowed as he pored over the book of spells. It was past midnight. His eyes ached, but he refused to rest. He was determined to find a spell that might shed light on the magical source described in Dumbledore's conjecture. Over 10 years had passed since he first crossed into the wizarding world, and several months since he had regained his freedom. In that time, he had immersed himself in the study of magic, only to confront one sobering fact. His magical talent was ordinary. The world's magic had been dissected and refined to near industrial precision, much like the Muggle world after the Industrial Revolution. Even average children could achieve respectable results if they applied themselves. Yet he, carrying only ordinary gifts, also bore fragments of Voldemort's soul. Those remnants possessed an understanding and mastery of the dark arts that far surpassed his own. He envied them fiercely. Often he felt the urge to delve deeper into the dark arts, but here at Hogwarts, under the watchful eyes of the old Bumblebee, doing so openly would be madness. If he could reclaim more of Voldemort's soul from the Horcruxes, his magical aptitude should grow. But he had no idea how to extract those fragments. The remnants carried no memories of how to do so. That would have to become a future research project, for which he currently lacked both conditions and ability. For now, he planned to fortify his magical theory and hone his practical casting skills. But the unexpected appearance of Dumbledore's conjecture had given him a new path. If he wasn't a genius himself, he would follow in the footsteps of one. In the deep silence of Hogwarts at night, while obedient students slept and the mischievous ones roamed, he pushed through exhaustion, searching for a glimmer of hope. Enemy-trapping wards, protective magic, can affect multiple targets, but the effect, raging flames, elemental magic, doesn't align with general wizarding practice. Discard. Obscure perception, due to curses. I have some experience with that. Keep as backup. Voldemort's gaze moved down the list, dismissing most spells outright. A few were noted in the small notebook beside him. Another half-hour passed. Fatigue deepened. He had slept barely an hour the previous night, and now pushed into the late hours again, mind worn thin. Just a few more, only a few. He willed himself onward, fingers sliding down the page, reading spell after spell. Patronus Charm, remarkable, tied to emotional willpower, keep as backup. Men to perfection, household magic, low priority. Scourgify, domestic. Wait. His fingers stilled. He shook his head, blinked hard, but the weight of drowsiness pressed on him. He grabbed his water and drank deeply. The haze lifted slightly. He returned to the page. Men to perfection, household magic, yes, but remarkable. It restores anything to its original state. He murmured the name, eyes settling on the neat line of words. Spell, men to perfection. Repairs most damaged objects seamlessly. Invented in 1754 by Arabella Nutley, an employee in the Ministry of Magic's Misuse of Magic Office, originally to restore the Roman Colosseum after accidental destruction. Effect, effective on most materials. Restrictions, works only on non-living objects. Attempting it on living things causes severe scarring, irreversible injury, or death. Cannot repair damage from rare, powerful curses. Cannot repair powerful or complex magical objects. Restores containers perfectly, but not their contents. Ineffective on magic-sensitive objects like wands. The entry filled half a page in tiny type, but offered no real analysis of the spell itself, only its uses and limitations. The book of spells was thorough in scope, but shallow in depth. It said nothing about how the magic formed or unraveled. Voldemort lifted his head from the desk, frowning in thought. He raised his wand and flicked it lightly. Mend to perfection. A swirl of gold and violet light drifted from the wand, hovering under his control. He narrowed his eyes, studying it, but gained little insight. Zzz. He tore a page from his notebook, folded it, ripped it again, folding and tearing repeatedly until it became a crumpled ball. Tossing it into the hovering magic, he watched. A breeze seemed to whisper through the room as the paper unfurled in reverse, fragments spinning inside the golden violet glow. Piece by piece, they stitched back together. At first, cracks remained, but as the magic sank deeper, they vanished before his eyes, until the sheet was flawless. Even the creases disappeared. Time flowing backward, he murmured, holding the paper, rubbing and holding it to the light. No seams, no trace of the tear. He returned it to the notebook, wand ready, mend to perfection. The glow streamed from his wand, sealing the torn edge between page and spine. Moments later, the light faded, leaving the book untouched. Household magic, yet extraordinary. Is this truly a property of time reversal? Still murmuring, he picked up a small crystal ornament from the table, a model of London Bridge, a trinket from the Muggle world. Crack! He dropped it without hesitation. The crystal shattered into a constellation of glittering shards. Men to perfection. The wand aimed at a large fragment, gold-violet light flaring, and again, time seemed to reverse. Every piece from beneath the table and beside the chair flew upward, converging until the London Bridge stood whole once more. London Bridge, fly here. A subtle twist of the wand, and the restored crystal model floated into his hand. He held it to the light, inspecting carefully. Not a single mark, identical to before. He murmured softly, recalling the process of its restoration. A faint glimmer of excitement stirred in his tired eyes. Restored perfectly, it should be remarkable enough. Voldemort twirled his wand, reflecting. After all his deliberation, the spell he chose turned out to be a simple household charm. Yet, as he suspected, the magic was extraordinary nonetheless. All teenagers get into mischief, except Ravenclaws, Voldemort remarked with a faint smile, withdrawing his gaze. Yes! Ha ha! I saw the assignments you set for the upper year Ravenclaws. Brilliant work. It'll teach them to think for themselves, Flitwick said. As head of Ravenclaw House, he rarely withheld praise for his students. Of course, I put some thought into those, Voldemort replied, turning his attention to the food before him. He was starving. That day's lessons had been entirely with fifth years. Because they would take their OWLs at term's end, Voldemort ran separate classes for them with a meticulously prepared curriculum. Unlike other years, he assigned endless written exercises to prepare them, while minimizing essays and practical work. The result was an incredibly dull fifth-year Defense Against the Dark Arts course. By day's end, students across all four houses grumbled, "Learn spells? Forget it, he just lectures nonstop. My notebook's got 13 pages of writing, every line crammed full." You wouldn't believe it. Professor Quirrell spent an entire class reviewing first-year material. Merlin, my brain is mush. The once intimidating Professor Quirrell had earned a new nickname, the Boring Quirrell. Even Ravenclaws, famed for their intellect, were overwhelmed by the flood of information he crammed into their heads. Yet, despite the exhausting day, Voldemort didn't go to bed. After his evening lesson, he headed to the library on the second floor of Hogwarts. He was practically a fixture there. Since the start of term, he had visited daily. "Professor Quirrell, what book are you looking for today?" It was only their third meeting, but Madame Pince already remembered him. Not because of Quirrell's usual self, but because on the very day of his return, Voldemort had disrupted her peace. "Everything on the mending charm, Madame Pince. I'll need your help," he asked directly to save time. "You're researching that spell?" she said, pointing to a section of shelves. "Over there. I believe a few volumes cover it." He noted the direction, then lowered his voice. "Anything in the restricted section? I imagine the material there would be deeper." Madame Pince didn't seem surprised. The restricted section was dangerous for students, but far less so for professors, especially on books about everyday magic. "I'll have to check the index. Household use books are rare there." She pulled a black leather-bound notebook from beneath her desk and flipped through it quickly. While he waited, Voldemort surveyed the grand library. A hall carpeted deep red, lined with polished wooden tables scattered with students. Beyond them, towering bookshelves stood in precise rows like soldiers on parade. Overhead, a magically enchanted dome shimmered with starlight, mirroring the night sky outside the castle. He drew a slow breath, savoring the faint scent of parchment and ink. Being a professor was fine, but being a librarian, now that sounded like a life. His idle thoughts broke when a small figure caught his eye. A younger girl, hair wild and brown, with prominent front teeth, clutching a book to her chest as she hurried toward a desk. "The trio hasn't even formed yet," he mused, then slowly turned away. "Found it, Professor Quirrell." Madame Pince's voice rang at just the right moment. "Restricted section, 5th row, 3rd shelf. The Secrets of Time. Nasty book, by all accounts." Voldemort raised an eyebrow. The Secrets of Time, now that was a title that piqued his interest. "Thank you, Madame Pince." He smiled politely and left, but didn't head straight for the restricted section. First, he browsed the ordinary shelves. In the indicated area, he was surprised to find an entire half shelf dedicated solely to the mending charm. He pulled out the first book, The Mending Charm That'll Make Muggles' Jaws Drop. A few casual flips later, he slid it back. It was the memoir of a wizard who had pranked Muggles with the charm, boasting that he'd even spent a brief stint in Azkaban for his antics. Merlin's beard. Was this man an idiot? The second book wasn't much better. A wizard who had made a career of passing the charm off as sleight of hand in a Muggle circus. "What is wrong with these people?" Voldemort muttered, defeated by the sheer, overflowing need these wizards had to show off. Several more books proved equally frivolous, though he forced himself to skim them all. At last, after much searching, he found something of real interest: The Mending Charm's Mishaps, a detailed record of cases where the charm had gone wrong. Rhythm of Repair, focused entirely on wand movement techniques for casting the charm. The Twisted Compendium of Mending Charms, a catalog of repair spells from around the world with analysis and descriptions. Voldemort didn't read them in detail. He simply selected the promising ones, stacked them, and carried the pile toward the far end of the library. There, a dim, shadowed section awaited, the restricted section. Most students avoided it, but he felt no hesitation. Countless fragmented memories of his remnant soul included hours spent there. He had been a regular visitor since childhood. I wonder if that wandering Horcrux of mine developed a fondness for this section because of me, he mused. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here it is, 5th row, 3rd shelf. Balancing the heavy stack, Voldemort stepped into the darker gap between the towering cases. The secrets of time, secrets of time, here. He set the pile down and drew a massive tome, its spine as wide as his palm, pages nearly the size of a child's torso. All this, just for one repair charm, he murmured, eyeing the cover. An animated image showed a wizard mending a child's wound, but the magic was nothing like a pisky. A repair spell can't heal injuries, so why is he doing this? Voldemort muttered, opening the book slowly. Oh, blast it! That hurts like hell! A pained roar erupted from the pages, loud enough to echo through the library. Curious students glanced toward the restricted section. Use the silencing charm, Professor Quirrell. I forgot to mention that, Madam Pince called, clearly signaling who was responsible. Yes, madam, Voldemort replied swiftly, raising his wand and casting Muffliato on the bellowing book. Oh, blast it that! The voice cut off instantly. Satisfied, students returned to their work, though many whispered to friends about the incident. What's Professor Quirrell up to? Tormenting students in the restricted section? A baseless rumor, but students loved it. Many tried to sneak in, only to be stopped by Madam Pince. Lumos. Voldemort flicked his wand. A small light hovered above his head, but before he could look back at the book, it was pulled away. Shh! The glow vanished. He blinked, then stepped toward where it had been absorbed by a book titled Let There Be Light. The magical world truly is fascinating. He didn't pick up Let There Be Light. Instead, he closed the tome in his hands, retrieved the earlier stack, and left the restricted section. He would read in his office. Too many unpredictable factors here might distract him. As he approached Madam Pince's desk to fill out the borrowing form, he noticed something unexpected. The girl from earlier, quietly weeping in the distance. He paused. Should he approach? Would getting too close to the Golden Trio increase his risk? But Miss Know-It-All, Hermione, had traits of both Ravenclaw and Slytherin. Her intellect was a perfect Ravenclaw match, and her ambition, shown by her eventual rise to Minister for Magic, revealed pure Slytherin at heart. Perhaps she might be worth influencing. Voldemort stepped forward toward the softly crying Hermione. What's the matter, child? He set a thick stack of books on the table and spoke in a quiet, gentle voice. Hermione first noticed a pair of shoes stopping beside her desk, then a tower of books landing in front of her. When she looked up, she found herself staring at the professor, who had recently been collecting an alarming number of new nicknames. Oh, Professor Quirrell. Sorry, Professor. I'm fine. The young Miss Know-It-All stammered, but at 11, she clearly hadn't mastered the art of convincing lies. I saw you crying over your notes. Are you stuck on a problem? Voldemort spoke gently, taking a seat beside her as if it were perfectly natural. As a professor, I'd like to help you with a few questions. Then he made an exaggerated face. Of course, anything too difficult, I might not understand at all. Pfft, she laughed, only for a stray snot bubble to shoot from her nose and land squarely on her notebook. For a moment, neither knew what to say. I've been studying a household charm recently, a mending spell, perfect for situations like this. It was Voldemort who broke the silence. With a flick of his wand, the spell erased the offending mark from her notebook. That's amazing! Hermione's eyes widened as she stroked the page, now perfectly clean. Household charms. Your first-year charms class will cover this one, Voldemort said with a small smile. I'll get to learn this spell this year? Hermione asked eagerly, though her gaze drifted to the stack of books in front of him. Are all these about that spell? Voldemort nodded. I'm conducting a study on the mending charm. Fascinating, isn't it? It really is, Hermione agreed, looking back at him with admiration. I heard you were an excellent student when you were at school. Was that true? Of course, but there's nothing to boast about. Every Ravenclaw is like that. It's a house full of wisdom, Voldemort replied modestly. Hermione nodded, a faint regret in her expression. The Sorting Hat wanted me in Ravenclaw, but I chose Gryffindor. It didn't refuse me. I don't know if that was the right choice. There's nothing to regret. Every house has its strengths, Voldemort said easily, steering the conversation back. Now, what's troubling you? Let's sort it out quickly. The library will be closing soon. Oh, yes, Hermione remembered. It's the essay, Professor Quirrell. I don't know how to write my transfiguration paper. Is it that you don't understand the material? Voldemort asked, genuinely puzzled. From memory, she excelled in transfiguration. Almost perfect, only a hair behind the most naturally gifted students. No, I understand it, Professor. I just don't know how to write the essay. I've never done this kind of assignment before. Voldemort blinked, thought for a moment, and asked, You mean you don't know the format of a paper? Yes, no clue at all. I've never written anything like this, Hermione admitted with a grimace. Oh, well then, that's just a matter of experience, and as luck would have it, I know the answer. His teasing tone eased the last of her frown. First, you need a title, direct, specific, eye-catching, and to the point. Hermione instantly whipped out her notebook and began jotting notes. Next comes the abstract, a brief summary of the paper's purpose. Keep it short, just highlight the core points, Voldemort continued. And then? Hermione scribbled furiously, barely looking up. After that is the main body. First, clearly state the topic you want to discuss. Then elaborate. You can include your own views, but try not to let emotion creep in. Emotion? What sort of emotion? She finally looked up, wide-eyed and confused. I mean, don't write too many subjective feelings, like I think this spell is too hard or too easy. Stick to what's relevant to the discussion itself. I see, Professor. What comes next? She recorded every word without missing a beat. Then the conclusion. What results you arrived at from studying the topic. You may also include a brief outlook for the future if you like. She nodded vigorously, writing everything down, even noting his casual, if you like. Finally, list the articles or materials you used while writing, only the most important ones. Hermione glanced at the towering stack of books before Voldemort, then at her own beginner's guide to transfiguration, puffing out her cheeks in mild frustration. This girl. She sets impossibly high standards for herself, and she's fiercely competitive too, Voldemort thought. Thank you so much, Professor Quirrell. If it weren't for you, I really wouldn't have known what to do. At the library doors, Hermione gave a polite bow. It's nothing. Hogwarts has never been late with my paycheck, Voldemort joked, making her laugh again. May I help you carry those books back? As a way of saying thanks? She asked hopefully, once her laughter subsided. I'm afraid not. I'm heading to the kitchens for a late-night snack, Voldemort said with a wink. If you're staying up late, you have to take care of your stomach. Oh, well, thank you anyway, Professor Quirrell. She barely finished speaking before her stomach growled loudly in betrayal. You didn't eat dinner? Voldemort asked, curious. I wanted to finish my paper quickly, so I didn't eat much, she admitted shyly. Between the runny nose earlier and now this, she felt like she'd made a complete fool of herself today. Then come with me to the kitchens. The Hogwarts house elves are always happy to serve us, Voldemort offered. Is that really allowed? Her eyes widened. I've only ever read about house elves in books. Her excitement was clearly more about the novelty than her hunger. Understandable for a Muggle-born who had only just arrived. It's fine. The whole school exists to serve its students. And us professors, of course. Voldemort was already heading for the stairs. I'll help you carry your books, Professor. Please let me do that much, she said, hurrying after him. I'd let you, Voldemort replied with a grin, but I'm afraid they block your view, and we do have to go down the stairs. She blinked, glanced at the stack of books in his arms, and reluctantly conceded. Then at least let me take a few, as thanks. Of course. Here you go. Without lifting his wand, Voldemort tilted his head, and a few books floated into her arms. Merlin's beard, Professor, you didn't use your wand? How did you do that? Wandless casting, wordless casting. You'll learn it in the upper years, not yet, he said aloud, though inwardly he sighed. He could only manage such feats with simple spells. His skill had its limits, no matter how steady and strong Quirrell's magic was. What year, Professor? She pressed as they made their way down the stairs. They entered a broad underground corridor where several Hufflepuff students passed by. After a short walk, they stopped before a painting of a silver bowl brimming with fruit. Tickle the pear, Hermione? That's how you open it, Voldemort instructed. How do you know my name, Professor? She asked, doing as told. I was at your sorting ceremony. Between all 4 houses, there were only a few dozen first years. I remembered everyone's names. Understanding dawned on her face. She grasped the green handle the pear had become and pulled. A kitchen as large as the great hall appeared before her. At the far end blazed a massive fireplace, and in the space between, over 100 house elves bustled about. It's huge, Hermione breathed. Those are house elves? Her voice carried, and the elves froze mid-task, turning toward the doorway. They glanced at Hermione first, then quickly shifted their focus to Voldemort. Professor Quirrell, have you come for me? A small elf piped, hopping forward eagerly. Yes, Dava, I need you, Voldemort said with a nod. We need a new summoning ritual. Can you arrange it? Setting down his books, he snapped his fingers. Of course, Dava is always honored to serve you. The elf bowed so low his head nearly touched the floor. Excellent. I'll need 2 late-night meals, delivered too. Voldemort glanced at Hermione, though she didn't seem to notice the implication. My office, he finished. Yes, Professor Quirrell. 2 suppers coming right up. I'll make your favorite sausages and cake. With a crack, Dava apparated to a stove and began cooking. Let's go, Hermione. If you step inside, their enthusiasm will overwhelm you, Voldemort murmured in her ear, bending to retrieve his books. Hermione obediently closed the door, though she kept peeking into the kitchen until it shut completely. Then she hurried to catch up with him in the stone corridor. They don't get paid, do they? She asked, matching his stride with quick little steps. Wizards are enslaving house elves, aren't they? You could put it that way. But if you want the full story, read Hogwarts, a history. It explains how Lady Hufflepuff rescued them. That's hardly liberation, Professor. In the Muggle world, people have already achieved freedom and equality, Hermione said proudly. Voldemort didn't slow down. He simply turned to give her a strange look. I'm telling the truth, Hermione added quickly, afraid he wouldn't believe her. I come from the Muggle world too, Hermione. You can't fool me, Voldemort said with a faint smile. That made Hermione pause. She hadn't expected a Hogwarts professor to be, like her, Muggle-born. Discrimination is everywhere. You should read Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream. His dream still hasn't been fully realized, Voldemort said with a wry twist of his mouth. Hermione silently noted his words, though inwardly she resisted them. At 11, she truly hadn't encountered prejudice. Understanding would come with age. My father says discrimination's been eradicated. Black people have equal rights, and England is a democracy. Democracy is just a political slogan, child. Class division will always exist. It's an immutable fact. Voldemort stopped walking and looked at her. If you can restrain yourself from looking down on others, that's already remarkable self-discipline. Not everyone is capable of it. The young witch wanted to argue, but she couldn't find solid footing. She was still too young, too inexperienced to fully grasp such matters, even in the Muggle world. And facing a professor put her at a disadvantage. Still, she wasn't ready to yield in her heart. We'll talk more in my office, child. This isn't the place for debate, Voldemort said, heading up the stairs first. Hermione followed close behind, eyes alight with determination. The little girl who loved to argue right from wrong was ready for battle. Chapter 43, The Shifting Star of Fate. Do you know how many countries England has invaded? Over 150. The infamous British East India Company. You should read up on it. The Great Irish Famine, the Great Indian Famine. Look at what Churchill said about them. And the Black War, the Tasmanian people were wiped out completely. From eager anticipation to soul-crushing despair, how long does that take? Apparently, not even the time of a midnight snack. When little Hermione Granger stepped into the office, bright-eyed and hopeful, she had no idea she was walking into a torrent of harsh truths. Her worldview was still forming, and the sudden flood of facts, so contrary to what she had believed, left her reeling. Only after he had vented did Voldemort notice her pale, worried face. Of course, those were the negatives. England has done some good things too, he added, perhaps to avoid pushing her too far. What good things? Hermione asked immediately. Well, they accumulated enough wealth for their citizens to indulge for decades. Look at the British Museum. It's full of treasures. Sell a few pieces and they could live in luxury for years. This, unsurprisingly, did little to soften the blow. After enduring Voldemort's verbal onslaught, all Hermione heard between the lines was war and plunder. But at least it saved some antiques from being destroyed, right? She finally said, trying to extract a single positive point. Of course, though one day someone will probably try to walk off with their country's artifacts and most likely get stopped. The memory of that scene at the Louvre made Voldemort chuckle, The black lad had carried the piece as if it were his own. Hermione's face grew even paler. She chewed mechanically, turned into a little automaton of emotionless eating. A nation's policies can't be judged as simply good or bad, Voldemort said, finishing the last bite on his plate. He figured she needed a pause. I don't quite understand, Professor, she said, lifting her head. The light in her eyes had dimmed. Her proud nation was not the ideal she imagined. It was a heavy blow for an 11-year-old. A nation is a collective, made up of countless individual wills. Some people hold great influence like presidents or prime ministers. Others, far less, like ordinary citizens. As he spoke slowly, she began to grasp the idea, nodding as if piecing it together. When those wills converge, tangled human relationships, political stances, and conflicting interests create internal friction. What emerges is the collective's most urgent, most primal desire. And what desire is that? She asked. Survival, that's the first instinct. The second is profit, and in practice, that often means plunder. The spark returned to her eyes. Are all nations like this? She asked eagerly. Voldemort nodded. From ancient times to today, it's always been so. Then, is there no nation that could do better? There is, but it requires a strong culture as its foundation. Only then can a nation act with more restraint. Even so, it will still plunder in some form. As he spoke, the words of the Tao Te Ching came to mind. The way of heaven takes from the excess and gives to the lacking. The way of man takes from the lacking and adds to the excess. And which culture could do that? Does Britain have it? She asked, hope flickering in her voice. Of course not. If it did, it wouldn't have done those things. Her expression darkened. You needn't dwell on it. Once you graduate from Hogwarts, you could study in the Muggle education system. They have different perspectives, and what I've told you is certainly one-sided. That finally eased her a little. After sipping her milk and collecting herself, she asked, Do you think Muggle knowledge is useful to the wizarding world? Think of the wizarding world as a single nation. Look at what it's doing, and you'll see whether Muggle knowledge is useful. What is the wizarding world doing? She asked. Hiding. Voldemort grinned. Survival is a nation's first instinct. From that, you can see the wizarding world is afraid. Hermione blinked, incredulous. Wizards were so powerful. How could they fear Muggles? You don't believe me? Voldemort asked. She hesitated, then nodded slightly, quickly lowering her head to avoid seeming rude. It's perfectly normal not to believe it. Hardly anyone in the wizarding world does. Voldemort let out a long breath, staring off for a moment. You know what an atomic bomb is, right? Do you think something like that could destroy Hogwarts? Of course not, Hermione said, startled. Muggles could never even find this place. Read Hogwarts a history, Voldemort said quietly. Muggles can see it. Only in their eyes, it's just a ruined building. And while they can't enter, that doesn't mean they can't locate it. That's complicated, Hermione said, shifting uneasily. Of course, but don't forget squibs. They can see Hogwarts clearly, and they could help the Muggle world learn about ours. Voldemort shrugged. But they're part of the wizarding world, too. They wouldn't want to harm it, right? Hermione asked, uncertain. There are traitors everywhere. History makes that very clear. After that, Voldemort lost interest in continuing. He had said enough, any more, and he risked revealing too much. All right, Hermione, these aren't things we should dwell on. Headmaster Dumbledore will handle everything. He's the greatest white wizard alive. We should trust him. Hermione nodded, but the crease between her brows betrayed her thoughts. The seed of doubt had been planted, and that was exactly what Voldemort wanted. I'd rather you didn't repeat what we talked about today, Voldemort said, bringing the conversation to a close. He had no intention of letting her words stir trouble or draw Dumbledore's attention his way. I won't, Professor. Besides, I doubt I could explain it clearly. Hermione gave a faint, bitter smile, pushing aside the tangle of thoughts in her mind. For an 11-year-old, she carried herself with striking maturity. When you're older, after you've seen more of the world and read more widely, you'll understand, Voldemort told her with a smile. It's not such a strange idea, especially for a wizard from the Muggle world. We're not as arrogant as those born into wizarding families. Yes, Professor. I think what you've told me today has made me see things more deeply. My father always says, never look at the world from only one side. whether it's the wizarding one or the muggle one. You have a good father. If I ever get the chance, I'd like to meet him, Voldemort said warmly. That would be wonderful. He's always wanted a friend from the wizarding world, Hermione replied, beaming. I'll look forward to it. Voldemort stood. But for now, you should rest. It's late. Oh, Hermione gasped, jumping up from her chair. I lost track of the time. Sorry, Professor, I'll go now. Before he could respond, she scooped up her books and hurried out. Suck. I hope you'll one day see the true nature of this world, Voldemort murmured after she had gone. He snapped his fingers for Dawa, instructed the elf to tidy the room, then collapsed into bed. He was exhausted. If wizards could die from overwork, he was close. Chapter 44, The Marauder's Map. Voldemort was attempting the repairing charm in clumsy, guttural German, and it wasn't going well. His Purple Heart wand sputtered with 2 weak puffs, sending out yellow-violet sparks that fizzled before forming a proper spell. It's the rhythm, Professor Flitwick said, frowning. Put the stress at the start. Voldemort raised his wand again. Reparatur Spruch! Puff! Puff! Still nothing. The wand might as well have been mocking both professors. Across the hall, students watched from a safe distance, grinning. The loudest snickers came from Slytherin, the quietest from Ravenclaw, though Malfoy and the twins were the most obvious. Don't be like that, Weasley Sr., Hermione scolded, pouting. He's our professor. We should respect him. Of course. Fred, would you ever mock a professor? George asked. Never. The great Professor Quirrell is working hard to master the repairing charm. He's bound to succeed. Ha! Fred doubled over laughing, George egging him on. Their voices reached Voldemort. He glanced their way but didn't bother reacting. After all, in the books, they'd once landed a hit on him. A bit of mockery was nothing. Your syllables are still off, Flitwick interrupted. He's getting back at you because of how you mocked him this morning, Lee Jordan whispered to the twins. They suddenly looked stricken. This is bad. That thing's important to us. Yeah, we've got to find a way to get it back. Admit we were wrong? Apologize? Yeah, we'll try after class. They made a plan and acted on it the moment the lesson ended, but Voldemort refused outright, saying it was punishment for not paying attention in class. Everyone could tell it was payback for their earlier mockery. The incident earned him another unflattering nickname, but he didn't care. Compared to the Marauder's map, a nickname was nothing. He would have traded 100 of them for the map. He needed it badly, and he'd give far more to keep it. Hermione arrived early at the library, but even by closing time, she hadn't seen Professor Quirrell. He comes in every day, Madam Pince told her, but yesterday he borrowed a stack of books, so I doubt he'll be back soon. If you need him, his office is on the 3rd floor. You can't miss it. Hermione thanked her and left, disappointed. She didn't go to the 3rd floor. She had no good excuse to ask him to check her paper. She'd hoped to run into him by chance, but that window had closed. Voldemort, meanwhile, had no time for the library. He was busy with the mending charm. Trying it in different languages had sharpened his sense of its rhythm, but learning those languages was exhausting. Late at night, he finally stopped and unrolled the parchment he'd confiscated from the twins. I solemnly swear that I am up to no good. The tip of his Purple Heart wand touched the parchment. Ink spread from the point, blooming across the surface until a complete map of Hogwarts appeared. He bent over it and checked the headmaster's office. Empty. No names. Not Dumbledore. Not Fawkes. So, the old bee isn't at school? Excitement flickered in him, but he didn't move recklessly. Instead, he kept scanning the map, combing over every corner. It was like one of those spot-the-difference puzzles, draining on both mind and eyes. But the old bumblebee had been pressing him too hard to give up. Nothing here. In that case, let's take a walk. Brightening, he straightened his robes and left his office. First, he went down to the 2nd floor and stopped at a corner where a large black cabinet stood, a piece he recognized instantly. In over a month at Hogwarts, he had never dared to look at it directly. Not yet. The time wasn't right. He murmured the thought under his breath, staring at the cabinet from a distance before finally turning away. For now, there was no chance to move it, and until that opportunity came, he wouldn't so much as touch it. Better not to alert the snake in the grass. Leaving the cabinet behind, Voldemort ascended the staircases to the 8th floor. He stopped before a tapestry depicting a troll battering Barnabas the Barmy with a club. Place to hide things, place to hide things, place to hide things. He paced back and forth 3 times, repeating the phrase in his mind, until a smooth door appeared, the entrance to the room of requirement. How does it work, I wonder? Like a child eager to take apart a toy, Voldemort longed to uncover the room's secrets. But with Dumbledore's office right next door, he didn't dare act rashly, even if its master was away. He pushed the door open. Inside stretched a vast classroom, moonlight spilling through high windows over mountains of odds and ends left behind by generations of Hogwarts students. Drawing on hazy memories, Voldemort weaved through the piles, but soon realized he was lost. Too many years had passed, and the path in his mind no longer existed. Show me the way. He tossed his purple heart wand into the air. The moment the spell took effect, it hovered in front of him, then drifted off to guide him. Following the floating wand, Voldemort passed towering stacks of books and walls built from slingshots and toy saucers until he reached a trunk. Peeking out from the top were a dusty lock of hair and a patch of rusted metal. One firm kick and both would likely tumble down. He recognized the rusted fragment. It was part of Rowena Ravenclaw's diadem. More than an antique, it granted wisdom and held a shard of his own soul. A fragment still sane. How I wish I could take it now. But he restrained himself. Everything is in place. Now I just need to wait. He reached out from afar, fingertips brushing the diadem. His eyes gleamed with hunger for knowledge, talent, power. Then, without hesitation, he let go and turned away. I wonder what other secrets are here. Away from the crown, his excitement cooled, replaced by curiosity about the rest of the trove. He rummaged for a while, but found nothing of real value. This place is too big. Maybe one day I could organize a treasure hunt. There has to be something worthwhile. Time and energy were limited. For now, he gave up, though the thought lingered. I solemnly swear I am up to no good. He opened the Marauder's map again, confirming Dumbledore was still absent, then stepped outside and headed downstairs. Professor Quirrell, out so late, what are you doing? At the 4th floor landing, Voldemort encountered Argus Filch, the caretaker. He wasn't surprised. He hadn't bothered to hide his movements. Using a disillusionment charm or similar trick, only to be caught, would be harder to explain. Better to walk openly. Plenty of excuses could cover it. Studying spells wore me out, Filch. Just came out for a stroll. At the mention of spells, Filch's eyes lit up. And Mrs. Norris? Haven't seen her these past few days. She's patrolling elsewhere. The moment she spots a misbehaving student, she'll let me know, Filch said, animated. I hope you catch something, Voldemort said with a smile, then walked past him. Filch lingered, watching him go. If only all students were like Ravenclaws, he muttered. Voldemort, not far off, chuckled. Surely even Hufflepuffs weren't as quiet as Ravenclaws. Studious children caused little trouble. He continued downward at a leisurely pace, eyes roaming. By day he never dared look so openly, but tonight's rare freedom was a pleasure. Plans for the future churned in his mind. A Christmas tree here could justify moving things around. But getting from the 2nd floor all the way up will still be tricky. I'll need a detailed plan. Muttering to himself, Voldemort descended to the Great Hall, then climbed to the 3rd floor, finally returning to his office. A Hogwarts without that old bumblebee. Now that would be truly beautiful. With a sigh of satisfaction, he returned to his spell work, studying deep into the night until finally closing his book and going to bed. Chapter 46. Damn Slytherins. Quirinus Quirrell, definitely not the right choice for Hogwarts. Draco Malfoy sat perched on a desk, a small court of young Slytherins gathered around him. I met him before term even started, right outside Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions. Utterly rude. What did he do, Draco? Tell us, Pansy Parkinson prompted. He tried to lecture me in front of my father. Draco lifted his chin proudly, sweeping his gaze over the circle. Naturally, he failed. One glare from my father, and he didn't dare say another word. Wow, is he really that cowardly? A young girl asked. Of course. He can't even handle a simple repair charm. What else could he possibly do? Draco scoffed. And my father's on the school board. You know what that means, right? Most of the group shook their heads. Pansy tilted her head back with pride. She knew the answer and was about to speak when, I happen to know a bit about that, Draco. Want me to explain? The voice carried a trace of amusement. Malfoy jolted as if struck by lightning. He turned to find Voldemort standing there, smiling pleasantly, Percy Weasley at his side, glaring at Draco with all the self-righteous fury of a red-headed prefect. No need, Professor, Percy said quickly, puffing out his chest, clinging to the air of authority he just built among his peers. I can explain it to them myself. Good. Looks like you're settling in, Voldemort replied with an approving smile. Go ahead. You've got 20 minutes before class. He led Percy to the desk at the front. He's lying, isn't he, Professor? Percy blurted. Of course, I'm not afraid of Malfoy, either of them, Voldemort said, still smiling. That answer eased Percy a little, but he pressed on. Then why not expose him? He's dragging your name through the mud. Your reputation is something you reclaim yourself. Let your enemies wallow in their own arrogance, then strike when they're at their peak. Percy didn't fully understand, but something about the words stuck with him. Watch Malfoy, Voldemort went on. It's only been 3 days, and he's already used his family name and a few loyal allies to establish himself among the first years. Percy glanced over at Malfoy, still holding court, though at least he'd stopped sitting on the table. I couldn't do that, Professor. Not lie so easily. Then learn, grow. Voldemort's tone sharpened. The world rarely changes for us. We change for it. That's part of growing up. Percy nodded. When class starts, he'll probably try to cause trouble. Think about how you'll deal with it. Voldemort turned to his lesson plan, saying no more. Percy opened his mouth to speak several times, but swallowed the words. 20 minutes later, class began. Percy took the far side of the room. The second years gathered on Voldemort's side. The second years were easier. At least they didn't need everything explained from scratch. Over on Percy's side, Malfoy wasted no time cutting in, even talking over him mid-sentence. Percy's face reddened with anger. He tried to reprimand Malfoy, but the boy's sharp tongue left him no opening. From time to time, Voldemort glanced over but didn't intervene. Watching a Weasley and a Malfoy clash was its own entertainment. Both were pure bloods, just from opposite ends of the spectrum. Sometimes he wondered, did those who opposed pure blood privilege truly care for Muggles, or simply resent being shut out of that privilege themselves? In books, it was justice. In reality, it was usually self-interest. When Voldemort finished the lesson and was about to give the second year's practical work, intending to handle Malfoy himself, a shout rang out from the other end. Damn Slytherins! Will you ever learn any manners? The room froze. Even Voldemort looked at Percy in surprise. If Percy had said Malfoy instead of Slytherins, it might have passed. But this, how dare he insult Slytherin? Typical Gryffindor. No one talks like that about our house, not even the headmaster. Angry voices rose, especially from the second years. Percy instantly realized his mistake. He hadn't meant the whole house, just Malfoy's little crowd. But it was too late. His face burned, but pride kept him from apologizing. Then, silence. Voldemort tapped his wand to his throat, his magically amplified voice cutting through the uproar. Every student turned to him, waiting for Percy's punishment. It didn't come. Mr. Malfoy, Voldemort crossed to the first year's side, towering over Draco. Who gave you permission to speak out of turn in my class? Malfoy stared, stunned. That guy insulted Slytherin, and you're scolding me? Anger boiled over. He shot to his feet. Quirrell, it was him insulting Slytherin, not. He never finished. His eyes went wide. Wadiwasi. Voldemort's expression went cold. He flicked his wand upward toward the desk. The heavy, solid wood shot into the air and slammed into Malfoy's chest, lifting him clean off his feet. Crash! Clatter! Bang! Malfoy tumbled backward into a heap of desks and chairs, sending the area into chaos. The little snakes collectively sucked in a sharp breath. Merlin's beard! Were you trying to kill him? Pansy Parkinson clapped a hand over her mouth, eyes wide with horror. Professor? Percy took a step forward, but no words came. He stood frozen, unable to speak. Voldemort ignored him. His cold gaze fell on Pansy, and the silence crushed her instantly. I'll kill you, damn it! No one has ever. Malfoy staggered to his feet, blood welling from a cut at the corner of his eye, seemingly oblivious. He glared at Voldemort and raised his wand. Thud! A silent, disarming charm shot forward. Malfoy's wand flew from his grip, and with a flick of Voldemort's own wand, sailed across the classroom. You! the tip of a purple heart wand pressed against his nose. Malfoy managed a single syllable before going mute, not from fear of the wand itself, but from the predator's hunger in Voldemort's eyes. Professor, please, that's enough, Percy's voice called from the back, thick with genuine fear. In my classroom, you dare